Almost 20 years ago, Mark Cuban basically allowed Steve Nash to walk in free agency because he thought the duo of Nash and Nowitzki basically ran its course. Mind you, in this time frame with Nash, they had just had their greatest run in their franchise's history. They had just made 4 consecutive playoff appearances, they made a conference finals, and they were coming off of the worst drought of the last decade. In fact, if you look at the Mavericks through the 90s, they had the worst winning percentage, so that pairing had literally brought that organization life. With Steve Nash, they went from being the worst team all through the 90s to, in his last 4 seasons there, having the 3rd best winning percentage in the entire sport. And it's not like they were doing this against subpar talent or in a subpar conference. Look at those top 5 teams. They're all Western Conference teams. This was in the midst of the Lakers starting their dynasty, the Spurs beginning their dynasty. In the first 5 seasons of the 2000s, 4 of the MVPs were Western Conference representatives. In the first 8 seasons of the 2000s, 7 of them were from the West. The West was extremely top heavy back then. I'm saying all this to give you the background of the West and specifically the Mavericks at that time. Mark Cuban basically let Steve Nash walk for nothing, and even to this day, he still says it's his biggest mistake as the Mavericks owner. 20 years later, it looks like he's done it again, and this time it seems 2 times worse. The Mavericks right now are an absolute mess, and yes, it's easy to blame Kyrie and post that funny meme of him destroying all those teams, and it looks to be true, but it's really not Kyrie's fault. All of this truthfully started with the mismanagement at the top, which resulted in the reactionary move to gamble on Kyrie in the first place. I'm not going to beat you over the head with the Jalen Brunson thing because by now we all understand what happened. Mark Cuban once again didn't believe in his players, didn't offer Jalen Brunson that contract after he struggled a bit against the Clippers in 2021, which ultimately resulted in him testing the market in 2022 and him leaving for New York for absolutely nothing again. This one mistake looks way worse than the Steve Nash one ever did. At least when the Mavs lost Steve Nash, you could say, okay, the team kind of plateaued a bit in the stacked West. They needed a bit of a different direction. Steve Nash was entering his 30s, and the change with moving Steve Nash and moving on from Don Nelson allowed Dirk to really take that leap. Record-wise, they got even better. They made their first NBA Finals. Their best player won his first MVP. So even if they didn't win a championship in the immediate future, they were able to confidently say, okay, we made a solid choice, even though I feel like they could have at least gotten something back for Nash. Losing Jalen Brunson was quite literally the beginning of the fall of the Dallas Mavericks. Look at where the Knicks were last year and look at where the Mavericks were last year. And now look at them this year. I'm not saying it's all Brunson, but essentially that's like a 48-game impact. Never forget, right before the playoffs last year when Luka got hurt for the first 3 games against Utah, they were up 2-1, mainly because Jalen Brunson was doing this. At the top of the year of 2022, the Mavericks season completely flipped when they all bought in to Jason Kidd's team defense. They closed out quickly, they methodically hit Luka, they had one of the top defenses in that span, which resulted in them having the 2nd best record in that span, and they carried that momentum into the playoffs. In the first round, again without Luka for the first 3 games, they gave Donovan Mitchell, a known playoff performer, one of his worst series of his career. And Utah collectively, they scored the least amount of points per game of the entire conference, and they had the worst 3-point percentage of the entire playoffs. So Dallas's defense, they really held down the fort. So why is this Dallas team in 2023 5 games below 500, out of the play-in tournament, and so oddly bad? It's no secret to how bad the Mavs are defensively, really all season. They were ranked about 23rd, 24th pre-Kyrie trade. They're ranked 23rd, 24th right now. But offensively, even though I don't necessarily love the style, they've been, as expected, great. The Mavericks have 2 of the best half-court offensive players in the sport, and obviously they play to that. The Mavericks simply play half-court basketball. Like, they're dead last in almost every transition stat, dead last in pace, first in ISO possessions. They play to their best players' strengths. They literally have a foul magnet whining star, and it can play to his detriment, but Luka, he gets his calls. Kyrie's still as creative and efficient as a scorer as you can have in this league, especially at his size. Tim Hardaway Jr. is shooting 47% from deep since Kyrie arrived, and collectively, they're still the best shooting team in the league since Kyrie put on a Dallas jersey. So offensively, they're good. So again, they're terrible defensively, they're great offensively. What else can be another problem that this team really has? Because recently they've sucked. Well, Kawhi, he said it best. Boardman gets paid. This team is getting absolutely destroyed on the glass. Did you know they're getting out-rebounded by the largest margin in the last 4 seasons? Look at the team they're by 4 years ago. In fact, look at the last 5 teams that were dead last in rebound differential. They're either the worst team in the NBA or easily one of the worst teams in the NBA. So for the Mavs, it's an absolute mess of a recipe to not be able to really get stops. And even when you do, you can't effectively clean the glass. To me, as far as having like grit and toughness on the glass and defending the interior, they have like the worst front court depth or worst front court in general of any contender that I can really think about. Think about it like this. The Mavericks, they're 3-10 in their last 13 games. Guess what? In said games, they're out shooting their opponents from the field, from the 3-point line, and from the free throw line. So again, why are they losing like this? Because they are getting punished on the glass. In the last 13 games, they've been outboarded in 11 of them. In these games, they're giving up a differential of -7. That would be the worst in almost 15 years. Luka next season will be making $40 million, deservingly, obviously. But after that, you have some real head scratchers financially. Davis Bertans is getting paid to do absolutely nothing. Tim Hardaway Jr. is getting paid a little bit more to do what Davis should be doing. Maxi Kleber is on a pretty sizable contract given their financial situation. And you still have to decide, okay, we got worse after Kyrie got traded. We were the 6th seed and now we're the 11th seed. But are we going to keep him? Because he does have the leverage. Essentially, we traded DFS, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Jalen Brunson for Kyrie. And if you lose Kyrie, you lost all 4 of them for nothing. Mark Cuban should literally consider firing himself if that were to happen. But also, is Kyrie going to want to stay and come back to what looks to be a mess? I don't know if he's going to have options. I don't know what his market really is. But all in all, the mistake all goes back to Jalen Brunson. Mark Cuban could have kept Jalen Brunson, who gives you relative production offensively, on a reasonable contract, which would have left room financially for them to patch all those gaping holes. Remember, Mark Cuban is the same guy that didn't want to keep Tyson Chandler right after he anchored their 2011 championship defense, and he went on to win the Defensive Player of the Year for the Knicks the following season. Just like Steve Nash, right after leaving Mark Cuban, won back-to-back MVPs, whether you believe he deserved it or not. Just like Jalen Brunson, he probably won't win it, but he's in the running for Most Improved Player right after leaving Mark Cuban. This is a pattern now. If you guys like this video, I'm not gonna lie, I like the standings right where they are in the West. So if Dallas doesn't make it, I'm cool with that. But it's tough times in Dallas. Hopefully they can still get that pick. That's the good part of it. If you guys like this video, follow my social media sites, turn on post notifications, do all that great stuff, guys. And until next time, as always, stay tuned.